people relate to you.
Yeah.
And you feel like, okay, I want to hear this because I feel like we're connected.
Mm-hmm.
So finding this is definitely can be
We're
helped
connecting
through
right now.
100%, 100%. Hello everyone, I'm Sameh Abdallah, co-founder of Mia. And let me greet you in different languages. مرحبا, أهلا بيكم, like we say in Egypt. مرحبا فيك. شرفتونا عسلامة. Every language, bonjour. And it's a huge pleasure, like avec grand plaisir to have Mr. Ayman, Monsieur Ayman, with us, and our audience would love to know more about you.
Thank you very much. Ahlan wa sahlan. I am Ayman Sharqawi. I'm the director of the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training, which is the academic arm of the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, chaired by Her Royal Highness Princess Al Hasna.
Amazing, amazing. And actually, speaking of water, because my startup is called Mia, which means water in Arabic, I would love actually to ask a question, but this time it's related to ocean.
Yes.
Why is it important to keep oceans in mind as we look on mitigation and adaptation?
It is fundamental because ocean is literally the source of life. You can't quite see it from here, but behind that hill over there is the Atlantic Ocean. And we deeply believe at the foundation to work against silos, to keep in mind the importance of addressing issues through a full 360-degree approach. So climate, of course, is central, but so is ocean, so is biodiversity, so is the fight against desertification, and so is the broader 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And on that note, just a few weeks ago, we had the UN Ocean Summit in Nice. That was an important activity that was co-chaired by France and Costa Rica, and the foundation took part there. We supported youth participation. Ocean is the number one source of mitigation. It's a nature-based solution. It's natural, and it does a lot of work for us. Unfortunately, humanity is not necessarily doing the best job when it comes to preserving the ocean health in general, or the biodiversity that exists in there. So we need to do more. And similarly, when it comes to adaptation, we need to make sure that the communities whose livelihood depend on ocean richness, and also all the life that exists under the sea, is getting the needed support to be more resilient and to adapt to the impacts of climate change.
Yeah, that's super important because it's people usually talk about climate,
Yeah.
and they forgot actually connecting the dots. It's not only climate. It's about, yes, climate is one of the factors, but it
Indeed.
affects many other sectors as well, including water, including oceans, of course.
Precisely. And exactly on that, on systems thinking, because we're very much discussing systems thinking. How can we use systems thinking to tackle complex climate challenges?
Okay, let me talk on this point from an entrepreneurial point of view. Well, I was lucky enough to start my journey when I was 19 years old. Wow. I'm still a computer engineer, but back then I was a computer engineering student. And all I know was actually technology. And what we're taught in technology is you need to first understand your inputs and then find your equations in order to get the output.
Yeah.
So carrying this forward, I actually have this kind of thinking in everything I tackle. Like, guys, what's the problem? And out of the problem, I get the input. And out of the inputs, I said like, oh, let's find different equations and try to tackle this. And based on that, we see the output, and then we see, oh, is this the output that I need?
Yeah.
Or if not, we do something called iteration. It's iterate.
Iterative.
Getting from this very simple concept, actually complex challenges needs to be divided. So if you focus on everything, you focus on nothing. And you have to always to ask why. Like, why did this happen? And go for the root cause. Because if we kept on treating symptoms, it's never gonna end. And when we find the root cause, let's ask about, do more of like a stakeholder map, but not of like who are the people who impacts and actually impacted from this. So after seeing, okay, this is the root cause, and this is the people who's causing this, and this is the people who's impacting this. Let's then think of empathy map. Like, how does these people talk and say and listen and feel, and how does this people also talk and listen and feel, and then we find like the bridge, how we're gonna communicate with them and learn more about the problem, and then based on the problem we brainstorm the solutions.
So regarding, you were talking about equations, but you were
Yes.
also sharing elements of your journey,
Yes.
your own story. As a
Yes.
leader, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for some time, being exposed to some part of your journey, and you're such an inspiring leader. So building on stories, building on storytelling, how, according to you, can storytelling be a transformative community building tool?
We need to communicate with the people.
Yeah.
But then here comes the challenge. How can we communicate, and how can we not make the people like be bored when we're talking to them, or like, oh, I lost interest. And
Yeah.
here comes the power of storytelling. Like storytelling, like if you get people hooked in it, you find your elements
Yeah.
and the story elements.
Yeah.
So the first thing when I say about storytelling, I need to have an interesting story.
Yeah.
And how to test your stories, and that's a super important actually tip I'm gonna give you. If something happened to me that I feel like I need to tell someone about it,
Yeah.
I usually write it down.
Okay.
So before any speech or before any interview, I usually scroll between these situations
Okay.
and think of what kind of bridges does this situation can build. So if there's a situation between me and my father, so I would actually use that story if I'm talking to someone who has a daughter or who is also a father. So it's more about how can people relate to you,
Yeah.
and you feel like, okay, I want to hear this because I feel like we're connected.
Mhm.
So finding this is definitely can be
We're
helpful.
connecting right now.
100%. 100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. كل time. But really it's more about finding that click,
Yeah.
and people can say like, I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And then we also should put the sandwich theorem, like the information I want to put, it needs to be layered. But the layering, it's top down from the person in front of me point of view till my own point of view. So it's more of like
Yeah. Pulling
carrying
them in. Yeah.
pulling them,
in.
not pushing them.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
the pulling and the pushing. So yeah, that's my take on that. So speaking of storytelling, why is sport a powerful storytelling tool to inspire more climate champions? That's very interesting sport.
Yeah, sports. Well, for many reasons, and building exactly on what you're saying as well, the connection between sport and climate is manifold. And there's a framework that was developed by the UNFCCC, Sports for Climate Action, that we believe to be very important, and we're in full support of that. As you know, Morocco in a few months will
I
be
know
hosting
it.
the African Cup of Nations. We
oh,
look
oh.
forward to welcome you back, inshallah, at that
Inshallah.
point. And also a few years from now, Morocco will be co-hosting with Spain and Portugal the World Cup itself. And when it comes to the interface between sports and climate, on one hand, sports has a climate impact. So it's
Yes.
important to have that in mind and to educate around it, to raise awareness around it, to also measure that and reduce it as much as possible. But the other way around, sport is such a powerful storytelling tool. I mean,
100%.
when I connect, for example, with my nephews who love football, for example, and sports in general, the role models that those football players are and the impact they have in terms of youth, but not just youth, it's billions of people that are following
100%.
sports or active in sport. So it's a lever of communication that is very important, the storytelling through that, through values that are instilled by sports. When it comes, for example, training, the connection between training yourself to become a better sports player and capacity building to become a better climate champion. Also the reward and the idea that when you work hard, you become a champion.
Yes.
And for us, in the context of climate, of course, being a champion means meeting the objectives of the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In sports, you can mean a gold medal, a silver medal, a bronze medal, or a cup.
Like this conversation really made me feel like energetic and want
Good.
to like do some push-ups. Not
Okay.
push-ups. I can have like,
There's a space right over there. We can do it at the same time.
maybe I can do jumping jacks.
Okay, let's do that.
But something like that. But to end this, let's say this
Mhm.
together. It's more like here's to working together for our future. Let's have it. Whoa!